Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode. Today, we are going to get to meet with Kerry. She is awesome. She's had a really positive transformation in her life. She's lost upwards of 50 pounds. We're going to hear about her story and how she got into it and what she found to be useful. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we dive into things, Kerry?
No, go ahead and ask your questions.
All right. So, very first, I like to start at the beginning of your story. So, I know you said you lost 50 pounds. Let's go back to before that even started. What was your mindset before you started the transformation and got you to the point where you're like, I got to try something?
Mm. I was not in a good place. I was very depressed. Um, there were a lot of things going on in my life, and the depression was impacting me in ways like I just wanted to sleep all day. Uh, just no joy in anything. And I just started feeling worse and worse about myself. And I knew I was putting on this weight, I was comfort eating. And so I was at a really low point, and I have lost weight in the past doing it the old-fashioned way, dieting, exercise, the whole nine yards. And I was successful with it. But it was just this point in my life where I knew I needed some extra help. And I found out about semaglutide from my hairdresser, of all people. And I thought, well, what have I got to lose, really? I knew that there's side effects that I needed to educate myself on. So I went ahead and did that before I even started. And so that is what led me. I just needed that extra boost this time around because I was just in a really bad place to begin with.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. And so
Mhm.
you said that in the past you had tried other things and you were able to achieve weight loss, but maybe not weight maintenance, that you were able to, it just kind of fluctuated back on when you went into those harder points of your
Right,
life. And so you're hoping for something a little bit more stable. So
right.
you brought up a great point, and we'll talk about semaglutide and maybe some of the pros and cons you've seen about that in just a little bit. Uh, I know you just told me, but just to make sure, you were at 175-ish pounds, right,
Yes.
when you
Mhm.
started, and you got
Right.
down to about 125, so about 50 pounds.
Yep.
So during that time, first, how long did it take you?
Oh gosh. I've been on it for about a year and a half, but about the last 5, 6 months has been maintenance. So it
Okay,
took me about a year.
about a
Hmm.
year. So great
Yeah.
thing. During that year, um, did you make any other conscious switches or choices to diet and exercise besides? Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the diet side first. What were the conscious choices that you made diet wise to achieve this weight
Right.
loss?
I focus on protein, and anyone who has been on semaglutide will tell you that that is what you need to focus on so that you don't lose muscle mass. Because it does restrict your appetite so much that if you don't focus on protein, you just won't be getting enough, and you
Okay,
definitely don't want to lose muscle. And I was actually pretty successful at that. I lost very little muscle with this whole process.
that's great.
Mhm.
Do you have
Yeah.
any, were you like monitoring your lean mass during the process
Yes.
through?
Yeah, I would go in once a month and get my shots and bring them home with me. But when I was in the doctor's office, they would weigh me and they would check my muscle mass and fat ratios. And there was only one appointment where they told me, "Hey, you might want to increase the protein a little bit," and I did, and it pretty much
Because
solved the
you're just
problem.
losing too much muscle mass, which can be kind of
Yeah,
tricky long term wise.
yeah.
So you focus on increasing protein. Another big part of trying to protect lean mass during a caloric deficit is exercise. Were you on
Hmm.
any type of exercise regimen during this time?
No, actually, I had really good intentions,
Don't we
but
all?
didn't quite make it there the way I should have. But I'm actually starting to focus more on that now. I know it should have been all along, but I'm really happy at the weight I'm at. But I do want to increase some muscle mass if I can, and it's great for your bones, especially at my age. Yeah.
Right.
So
So it sounds like, for the most part, it's a fairly intuitive approach. Then were you tracking, you said macros, I mean protein, were you tracking all your macros, or were you just kind of trying to focus on maybe some higher protein foods that you knew?
I
So
just
nothing too
focused on
controlled.
it. Yeah, I
Okay.
would make sure I had at least one protein shake a day in addition to whatever else I ate. Like a handful of nuts, um, you know, little things here and there, and they do add up. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you uh during this time period, how are you feeling? Were you constantly feeling better? I know sometimes people get almost feeling worse during diets or, times of caloric restriction. How are you feeling during this time?
In the beginning, there was a bit of an energy slump. Um, but as time went on, I got better at being able to read my body signals and recognizing, oh, wait, you know what? I don't think I'm eating enough. And I'd have to push myself a little bit in the beginning to eat more than I felt like eating. Um, but it all worked out. And as I started losing more and more weight, my energy levels definitely started to go back up
You
just
definitely
from the weight
felt better
loss.
there.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about the semaglutide itself.
Mhm.
For the most part, would you say overall is a positive or negative experience? And then let's talk about kind of why.
Overwhelmingly positive
Okay,
for sure.
overwhelmingly
Mhm.
positive. So did you feel like were the best parts of it?
Just how easy it was. And I have done the whole diet and exercise thing in the past, and I think anyone who has been on a diet will tell you it's not very much fun being hungry. And you simply don't have that challenge with semaglutide. So you can make better, healthier choices a lot more easily when your stomach's not growling and you're not hangry.
Just kind of
So
takes the edge off a little bit and makes it better.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
And it
And I
seems like you
had
got, oh,
go ahead.
sorry, I was saying it seems like you got a lot out of it. I think on average, people only lose about 15% of their body weight from semaglutide. So you were definitely on the high end of responders because you were closer
Yeah,
to probably 40%. So, one and a half
um,
times that, or over double that actually.
that's true. I didn't
So,
even think about that.
yeah. So it sounds like it worked really well for you that
Mhm.
way. Um,
Right.
was there any negative side effects that you didn't see coming, and how did you deal with those?
In the very beginning, I had a little bit of nausea, but it was not severe by any means. And they gave me medicine for that, a Danzatron, I think it was. And I only needed to take it a few times throughout the entire course of treatment. And it was mostly in the beginning. And I did have some slow digestion issues, like some constipation here and there. But again, you just have to listen to your body and pick up the fiber and water intake if you do start feeling like your digestive system is getting sluggish. Um, if you put in conscious effort and just pay attention to how your body's feeling, those are very easy problems to mitigate. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
So it sounds like you were able to deal with most of the minor side effects, no problem. You didn't have any of the major ones that you kind of hear about as far as like the gut issues. So that's great. Seems like all in
Mhm.
all a pretty good experience for you. Are you still using semaglutide?
I am, and I'm spacing it out much further now in between the
Okay,
shots. Most people take a shot once a week, but I'm starting to push it back to like 9 days, maybe 10 days. And I know that I'm not saying that that's what people should do. That's just my own approach. And it also helps with the cost because these shots are not inexpensive.
yeah, they
So,
are fairly expensive.
yeah. So,
And so if you're tapering off of it, I'm assuming probably long term you're trying to get off of it. Is that the
yeah.
goal to? Okay. And so what is your kind of plan of action? You're to a maintenance phase. You said you're working on more just body composition at this point, aside changing weight. So when you
Right.
look forward in time and you say, okay, in X amount of days or months or years, I want to be off of semaglutide. What are you doing now to kind of help you be ready for when you're off of it and to be able to maintain without the drug in your system?
I am starting to exercise more. And I do intend to, I know good intentions, but to start lifting more weights because the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you're going to burn. Um, so those types of things. And I know just from experience that fiber is a huge benefit when you're trying to, curtail your cravings and hunger. So that and protein. to protein, fiber, uh, weightlifting basically is going to be, those are going to be my power tools, I think, for keeping at a healthy weight. Yeah.
That sounds great. So
Yeah.
it seems like everything for the most part's been overly positive. You had a really good experience. What,
Yeah.
now we're going to get into kind of, I guess, a little just more open-ended questions. Um, I know that when I've helped people through transformations or anyone I've talked to, everyone makes mistakes along the way. And I think it's a very powerful thing to learn from your own mistakes and also other people's mistakes. So when
Right.
you were going into this, what do you think is the biggest mistake you made that if you could rewind and start over, you'd be like, I'd for sure avoid this. And it doesn't have to be, it can be mindset, anything. Just what do you
Mhm.
think was your biggest hang up during this process?
I do regret keeping it hush hush and not not really fessing up when I talked about my weight loss on Facebook and Instagram, because I didn't want to deal with uh, pushback from people because I know that there's a lot of uh, very adamant opinions against something like Ozempic out there. Um, but it was my own personal choice whether I wanted to reveal that or not. But there are times when I think maybe I should have been more forthcoming and talked about it more so that I could encourage other people who are on the fence about doing it. So if I were to do it all over again, I would probably talk about it more and just be uh, very honest and transparent about it.
Makes sense. And so just kind of being honest about where you were at and that way kind of helping out others who are maybe in the
Yeah.
similar situation. So a similar question that I'd like to usually ask people towards the end is if you were about to restart this whole journey, or if you were talking to someone else who was about to start their health journey, um, what do you think what would be the biggest tip that you would give someone?
Oh, if they're just about to start their journey,
Hmm.
um, I would tell them to research all the biggest pros and cons of whatever weight loss system they choose. And I don't know. I think it's very wise to think about your strengths and your weaknesses with your prior attempts at losing weight. And if your previous attempts did not end up successful, then try something different. Like with Ozempic, I've never tried anything like it, and it ended up making a huge difference for me. Is know your strengths and weaknesses and tweak it. If try something different.
Perfect. I really like that. Knowing, I think we talked about this briefly right before the meeting, where I don't believe there's a system that's 100% good. Everything has a pro and a con to it. So you're trying to find something that
Right.
matches. A
Yeah.
follow-up question for that. Um, what were you able to do to find something that aligned with, because I know there's things outside of Ozempic that you were doing. So when you were planning the additional actions outside of the pharmaceutical use, what, how did you identify, okay, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and make a plan around those?
Right before I went on the shots, I did what I'm sure a lot of people do. I went and I stocked, my refrigerator and pantry with all very high protein foods, that kind of thing. So I did have somewhat of a meal plan in mind. I just made sure I had just the right healthy options for me instead of filling my cupboard, keeping my cupboards full of treats that I shouldn't have. Um, and I did keep track of what I was eating, and I think that always helps when you're trying to lose weight. Uh, I always got my statistics written down. When I went to the doctor's office, when they told me how much fat loss um, I was experiencing, I'd kind of give myself a pat on the back. I'd reward myself sometimes. Um, so I made sure I had those things in place, I guess you could say, to make sure I was successful.
Perfect. So it sounds like you touched on a couple things there. Food environment was a big one for you then.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
taking control of your food environment, that was maybe something that could have been a weakness. So then you said, okay,
Yes.
if I, and then kind of turning that into a strength by taking the food environment and then just keeping appropriate vision with setting goals and moving forward. Those were other
Yes.
big things
And
that helped out.
it wasn't easy for me because at the time I was living with two young men, 23 and 25, and they liked their food. They didn't want me impacting what they eat. So yeah, it was a balance.
For sure. Was this
Yeah.
like a family situation? Were these people you were related to, or
My two sons and my husband at the time. So yeah.
yeah? This is a really good, I think something if you have a little bit longer, I'd like to dive into. What are your best strategies for modifying what you were eating while not impacting what your
Mm,
family is eating? Because that's something that I think people underestimate a lot is how much their family and their culture plays into their dietary choices.
right.
So how did you navigate that?
Well, the protein shakes really helped. Um, they prevented me from wanting to snack on whatever they wanted to snack on. So I knew as long as I kept myself full of the right foods and I wasn't hungry, I wouldn't be tempted to eat the kinds of foods that they like to eat. So that was helpful and kind of out of sight, out of mind. I would just kind of push that to one corner of the pantry so I wouldn't be tempted when I looked at it. So and I would also keep reminding myself I'm trying to set a good example for my kids. And so that was enough motivation for me I wanted them to see me be successful. So that kept me on the right track. Yeah.
Perfect. That's
Mhm.
great. So I think that those were most of the main topics I wanted to cover today. Thanks to everyone else for tuning in, and hopefully we can learn from each other and grow and make a better, healthier environment for all of us. So thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome. Thank you.